Welcome to Talking Targaryen. Today we're talking about House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 8. This is the finale, titled The Queen Who Ever Was. There will be no future spoilers. We haven't read Fire and Blood. There was no Next Time On, but if there was one, we wouldn't have watched it. I'm Gil, I'm here with my brother,
Adam.
And my other brother,
Daniel. There sort of was a Next Time On. The end of the episode was like a trailer for the next season. Like they showed us all the different things happening.
I understand. That was good. That was clever.
It was a little too cheeky. I'm sorry.
So on the instant take, we did an instant take for this episode. I actually was fairly positive on it in certain respects. I did think it was maybe one of the better episodes of the season. We'll get into some specifics about why. But I think the main problem people had with this episode was its placement as the finale and the fact that there aren't two more episodes this season. And I said a few times on the instant take that I didn't feel as disappointed as everybody else. And in the days since, I've had over a week now to reflect on that. Why wasn't I disappointed in the cliffhanger and the fact that I have to wait a couple of years?
I know why.
Go ahead.
This is my assumption. You weren't disappointed because you weren't invested.
Yeah, I realize that's the sad thing.
Right.
I just didn't really care.
If you were invested, it would have pained you to think I have to wait 2 years now to find out what happens next.
Yeah.
But if you're just watching it passively and you're not like that hooked on the show, then what difference does it make?
Yeah, it was essentially that. There's been a lot of stuff we've liked this season.
Yeah.
Every episode will have some complaints, and that's among a bunch of stuff we really liked. But am I in love with the show at the moment? Not in love with the show at the moment. But I do stand by the positives I pointed out last week. I think there were some really emotional moments, significant moments that we'll talk about. Some stuff I didn't like. But Daniel, why don't you give your high-level thoughts?
So I guess I kind of feel similarly, which is like, yeah, I wasn't that invested. I generally enjoyed the episode. I do have a few major complaints. But overall, like, I enjoyed it. I think I just wasn't attached enough to be that disappointed that it's ending. But I am sad that it's going to be a while until the next season. But I think that's mostly because I really enjoyed talking about it. My concern is that the gap between now and the next season will just cause my interest to further decay.
Yeah.
Rather than letting, the more time passes, the more antsy I get to see what happens. I just if my interest is already, not very high, it's not going to get better between seasons.
But it'll help? Like, stepping away for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, it might help, though, to be honest.
I do think it'll help because I don't think you're going to not watch it. And then the trailers are going to come out. We're going to be excited about the next events happening. And then you're going to watch an episode and you're going to want to watch more.
Yeah, but I remember what it felt like when I would finish a season of Game of Thrones. I'd be screaming at the TV. I'd be like, "No!" Like when the credits come up, it was usually happening at a point where I'm like, "You can't stop the story now. I have to find out what happens."
Yeah,
I never felt that with this show.
Yeah, anytime Game of Thrones ended on a cliffhanger,
yeah,
you were hanging on that cliff.
Yeah,
you weren't like, I have complicated feelings about this. Yeah. It was a decent episode. No, you were just like, I gotta know what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I would scream at the TV like I just did.
It was scary.
Like, come on!
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was frightening. Well, let's go into the recap. Let's tear this episode apart, figure out what worked, what didn't, renew our appreciation for it, get excited for the next season. It might go that way. I don't know. We'll see. As always, this recap has been curated, generally to go location by location for simplicity, but chronological where necessary. I also have to mention that the pizza winner will be announced at the end of this episode. We did receive some entrants. Yeah, some people want that pizza. Entries. People want the pizza. Some people want it. And we'll find out.
Was I considered?
I had to disqualify you because your email was so disgusting when you told me what you were going to do with that pizza.
He drew diagrams.
Well, I thought we should start with my favorite story in this episode. Otto. We haven't seen him in a while. So in this episode, we see Otto. And what'd you guys think of that part of the
I
episode.
thought WTF. What are they showing us?
Hey.
Well,
I was like, he looks like he's in trouble.
and he looks up.
Yeah,
so I
but-
think somebody might be approaching him.
But like, why is this all we know about his character? He just disappears for half a season. It doesn't make sense because we have an omniscient perspective in the show. Like the show will show us stuff that other characters don't know. They'll let us in on some of the secrets. Then there are other times where they'll choose to cut away right before a character talks. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I don't get what they're doing. Why hold us in? They randomly choose one thing to hold us in suspense about, like whether or not Daemon said to kill a different son if they can't find Aemond.
Right.
You know, so there's no rhyme or reason to the decisions about whether or not we're in on the story from one situation to the next. So why is it that they decided to censor whatever it was that was happening to Otto? Like, clearly something major has happened. He looks like he's imprisoned and being held somewhere against his will, like in a dungeon or something. Now, why is it that they choose to gloss over a bunch of stuff and then randomly give us that little tidbit and then just move on? To me, it feels like, well, we haven't covered Otto in a while. We didn't have time to devote to his story, but something will have happened. And because it's the season finale, we know people are expecting an update. So because it's the season finale, but we didn't want to devote anything else to this, we'll show you just a little quick clip of him in this situation.
Yeah, what?
I mean, for all we know, it's like schedule-wise, he had conflict. So they're like, we can't cover his story enough, so we'll just cut to this. And then we'll have him say through dialogue, or we'll have someone get a raven that explains what happened next season. I don't know. I'm really annoyed about that, especially for a character that he's one of the better characters too.
It almost feels like a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something, where like at the end of the season they'd like show you like a preview of the villain for next season, just like randomly.
Yeah. It's I think there's a problem with this season. I don't remember I don't remember having this complaint at all last season, but the camera just often feels very unmotivated, or the camera is wielded defensively. We know people are going to call us out if Adam and Alan come out of nowhere as dragon riders, so we have to show them. They point the camera at them. People are going to want to know where Otto is. Go point the camera at him.
It's like the defensive is a good way to put it. It's like they're put every scene in this show, not every scene, but a lot of the scenes feel like it's almost like a just for the record thing. You know, you're putting a scene in so people can't accuse you of not covering X.
Well, but it's hard. It's hard to know where to point the camera when the show's unscripted and the actors are improvising.
Yeah. So to recap, at the montage at the end of the episode, we see Otto for a moment. Seems like maybe he's in a dungeon. Looks up. Maybe someone's approaching him.
So
We'll find out next
what do we
season,
think
hopefully.
happened?
I don't even.
Any theories?
I don't know.
Last we saw him, he was like, all right, screw this. You took my hand ship away. Now I'm going to take a ship back to Hightower. Or back
Maybe
to
Laris.
Old Town.
Do you think one of Laris' henchmen? It's like a
Oh,
thing
this
Laris
does
would
seem
do.
like something Laris would do. I'm just wondering why.
Because you know what's interesting? Any other like lord they fought with or whatever, like if he got captured in battle, they wouldn't keep him in a dungeon. I don't think.
Yeah, actually,
Right?
I
Like
that
only a
theory.
covert.
Yeah, this seems like a Laris thing.
Yeah, because Laris.
If they showed us a rat in his cell, then we would know for sure.
You would feel so vindicated. If they just dubbed in a line of Otto being like, "Get these rats away from me."
Yeah.
To get that rat away from me. Well, we were at the beginning of the season. Remember, Laris was trying to poison Aegon against Otto. He's like, you don't need that old man ordering you around. That was your dad's hand. You need some new hand, brother.
Yeah.
And so,
Hey, brother, you need some new hands, man.
so yeah, maybe he kidnapped him.
He turns into Otto from the bus driver from The Simpsons.
Maybe that's why I started talking like that.
Whoa, you need like a new hand.
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
He's good at
Or like-
impressions.
Or in Seinfeld, you've got hand. You can't give up your
I have
hand.
hand.
And you're gonna need it.
And you're good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to my next favorite storyline this episode. Rhaena at the Vale. Rhaena, she's working.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
She's working very hard because you can tell because she's thirsty. She's drinking pond water, and she has mud on her face.
Big disgrace.
And she's going to get that dragon. Her shoes are torn up, so you can tell she's working really hard to catch this dragon.
How old is she?
I don't know.
Too old to be this stupid. Is my feeling.
Like you're saying, she should have packed some supplies.
I mean, she
PB&Js.
literally just like suddenly just disappears off into the wilderness to go chase after a dragon for who knows how long.
We haven't
Like that. Her plot line for 2 episodes has been, it's like I saw a firefly. I'm gonna go chase it, and now I'm like I'm lost. And
there's a
so
version,
embarrassing.
This camera that they keep pointing at random places, like they haven't once pointed it at anybody, being like, "Wait, what happened to Rhaena?"
You are a child of the queen, and you are just roaming around. Like there's no one to notice that you disappeared.
And before anybody points out, she is a child of Daemon, which makes her basically a stepchild.
Yeah,
of the queen.
yeah. I mean, that's the point. Is she's royalty.
Yeah, that was me wielding this podcast defensively.
Yeah.
Because I'm ready.
Yeah, she's royalty, and she's just totally unmonitored.
Just also, how is she so stupid? Like, it's pathetic. Like, she's not even that far outside civilization. She ran off on her own, and she's like, it looks like she's like dying of thirst.
Well, and I think they're probably setting it up to feel like she's being rewarded for what she's doing. Like she's going off on her own, she's entering like the wilderness and working really hard, and she's exhausted and dirty, but she's gonna earn herself a dragon,
Right.
But
show us have her earn it in a way that isn't so dumb.
Yes, have her actually earn it. Maybe she goes out with a scouting party, they get attacked or something, she's left for dead.
Show
then
some
she
leadership
fights to get there.
Show some leadership quality. You know how like Alicent got one of the Kingsguard to just like go with her when she fled King's Landing. That was smart.
Yeah.
Show us some, and there's also like they've established over the last 2 seasons one of the themes being the way the culture and society is set up. Women are disenfranchised, have very little power, but the clever ones and the creative, intelligent ones have figured out how to arrange situations for their own advantage, even despite that. And it makes their successes even more impressive. Like you said with the scouting party, give us a scene where Rhaena actually takes on like a leadership role of some kind and actually manages to get some of her guards or like a little party, persuade them to go with her to go get the dragon. Maybe she tries to get them to come with her, and they say, well, we're under orders not to do this. And she's like, well, what are you going to do if I go? You're not going to stop me, but you can't let me go alone, so you have to come with me. Like,
something.
Give us something to feel like, oh, she's like clever. Yeah. She actually has some potential, especially if she's going to become one of the Queen's dragon riders. Like, they've given us even less than they've given about Ulf and freaking Hugh. They've been built up into more.
Yeah, why is she not like? This is where all this Hugh and his family cut that, put more into the Rhaena scenes, because that could be cool. Like she goes. This would be the first time we see somebody go out and fight for their own dragon that isn't Aemond, and there's somebody we can root for. But it's the way it's there's a version of this story that works just fine. I have no problem. I love the idea of Rhaena going out and getting a dragon. It's badass. But the way it's shot, where it's like she walks away with the wagon in view, cut to her dying of thirst. It's just
like
comes across.
Child. It's like kids. It's like a child is playing with dolls, and they're like, oh, and then Rhaena leaves to go get the dragon.
It reminds me.
It's just so simple-minded.
I did a short film in college, winner of the 2nd annual film festival at the school. It was called Poison. I played a very stupid character who decided to make my own poison, and then I accidentally drank it. Yeah. And then you cut to me outside, like vomiting and dying of thirst, and it was humorous because of how quickly it happened. And the problem is, this show essentially did that.
It feels like a B movie. Like it almost felt like season 2 of Raised by Wolves, or like something like that. Like that and the Otto scene both felt that way to me.
Well, and there's just like, I don't know what happened, but no one cares about writing anymore. Like, writing has just reached this like bottom of the barrel. Like this is one of the best shows on TV right now, and like the writing is just so hit or miss.
Yeah, sometimes it's great.
Yeah,
it
has the potential, but it's like they can't stitch it together in a way that where it doesn't hold up to scrutiny at all. Whereas Game of Thrones and like other well-written shows, they hold up to scrutiny where like, okay, because like this show superficially is well written in the sense that the dialogue is pretty good and whatever. Like you can find examples, but as soon as you take a critical eye to it, it all just falls apart.
Yeah. Was there like a writer's strike or something like leading up to this? I don't remember when that was.
I mean, I don't know. It might have been affected, and we do know. Well, we'll get to the cliffhanger, but it does seem like some of the time restraint on this and the number of episodes might have been external pressure from HBO, not story driven. So I assume. I mean, it definitely
maybe like to save money by putting fewer.
I think so.
Produce fewer episodes.
It feels like they are struggling with the allotted time, to balance out the episodes.
So I feel better about blaming like the HBO executives rather than the writers. I feel bad when we like.
At least it's a writer's room, so every writer listening to this, they're pointing at each other. Being
It's like a firing squad.
Exactly.
Nobody knows if they're the one.
Yeah. Some people have blanks, so they don't know.
Yeah, that's why, like, if it comes to a small independent movie, I'm not going to say a bad thing about it. Yeah. Why are you laughing?
No, I was Adam. Were you actually going to say the firing?
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
That's so funny.
And Dan, I picked up on that little crack about Raised by Wolves season 2. Aaron, I had nothing to do with that comment. Does not represent the views of
Anyway, one thing I was going to add before with this conversation about Rhaena versus dedicating time to the Ulf and Hugh story. Mm-hmm. The reason that they're worth comparing is because all three of them are different narratives about someone becoming a dragon rider.
Yeah.
Now, from the perspective of Rhaenyra and everyone on Team Black, Hugh and Ulf are total strangers. We have no idea who they are, where they come, like what kind of life they have, whether they're good people or not. That's the perspective of Team Black. The camera, quote unquote, meaning like whatever the show's focus is so inconsistent in terms of where it stands, in terms of its knowledge, whose perspective it's being delivered from. They should just decide what perspective they're telling the story from. So if they're telling the story from Team Black, or both, Team Black and Team Green, whatever Team Black or Team Green is aware of is fair game for knowledge. That's if someone on either team knows something, then the audience can know it too.
Yeah,
which is why I object to cutting away from Daemon when he's making a plan just to build up fake suspense.
Right.
And so show us Rhaena. Show us what her life is like while all this is going on, and she's basically getting trampled on in terms of not being paid any attention to. She has no power in the situation, but she is another chess piece on the chessboard, so it's kind of unfair how that's all happening. But and she's aspired to have a dragon, and she like wishes she had one, but she doesn't. Show us that story about how she evolves into actually like going off on her own, gaining some independence the way Alicent recently did, and then finding a dragon. That could have been like a triumphant moment, and it would feel almost like divine intervention that somehow a dragon just materialized for her, and the whole story of her getting sent away to Essos, like it all comes together in this. That could be a very climactic season-ending moment. That could have even been the last scene of the entire season, and it would have felt victorious. But instead, they were like, "Well, we're good writers, so we have to build this plot up before we get there. So instead, we're going to tell like a ham-fisted, low-effort version of that story for 3 separate people, none of which is satisfying. Whereas instead, show us the Team Black angle, show us Rhaena getting to that triumphant moment of getting a dragon, and then when Ulf and Hugh get their dragons, show us from Rhaenyra's perspective. They're total strangers. We have no idea who they are or whether they're dangerous or not."
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. I just used up all my mana on that rant.
Yeah, no, I think it's instead of what you just described for Rhaena, it's all set up so when she gets a dragon, they can be like, "Oh, we had scenes before. It didn't come out of nowhere." Yeah, I think it works best when they're picking a point of view. And Hugh, for example,
quality over quantity. It's like the oldest. It's like a really old principle.
Yeah, they with Hugh, we're supposedly in his perspective, and then you skip over the most important thing that's happened in his life. I was like, oh, his daughter died. Okay, whatever.
Oh yeah. What the heck?
It's like, you're going to show us how he's struggling to feed his children, but you skip over the part where she died. I feel like if I'm going to show one part,
that would be potentially the most emotional moment of his entire life.
And that might have connected us to him enough that we would have actually cared when he got the dragon.
And maybe have her die around the time where he's making the decision to go become a dragon rider. Like, piece it all together.
Well,
but what's happening? How come like it's so easy to look at this and point out all the problems with it? It's so easy. How does it get through?
I mean, to me, a lot of it feels like it comes from the limited episodes thing. Because so many of these issues could be solved by more time. So I'm betting that's where it comes from. And look, let's be a little more charitable. This is a complicated story with a lot of moving pieces. And then you have the added pressure of you only have a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I can see why this would happen.
And they've not left a single water bottle on set. Give them props where they deserve props.
Starbucks cup.
I mean, I would rather a couple of water bottles.
Yeah.
Wait, did she, by the way, I can't even remember now. Did she get the dragon?
No, not yet. She got closer to the dragon.
So that was her plot for 2 episodes.
Yep.
God.
I don't know. What do you guys think of my strategy to take my least favorite parts of the episode and bunch them all together? Do you want to go to my next favorite storyline?
Yeah.
Essos. So Tywand is here to negotiate with the Triarchy to get their help destroying the blockade. And there's different ways to go. They thought...
I'm starting to cringe just thinking about it.
What if we kind of like borrowed from an Adam Sandler book? You know, just like take a really prim and proper guy, we beat him up, and he's like, oh my word. You know, mud wrestle. Like, hey, why don't we eat some people? Oh, we're just kidding, Tywand, you nerd.
This is like
you
on
loser.
The level.
My name is not Tywand, it's Tyland.
Whoever came up with this.
I want you to impregnate my wives. Well, I never.
This is like whoever was voting for man getting hit in the groin with a football as like the best film in The Simpsons.
Football in the groin.
Football in the groin. Yeah.
Great episode.
It works at so many levels. Roll it again.
And then they did the super bad scene where he has to sing in front of everyone and he's really nervous.
Oh, yeah.
These eyes cry every night. They long to hold you.
Hoist me, lads, and hoist again. Salute the captain's daughter.
From the get-go, that scene, just from the way beginning, him negotiating, I was just like, it just felt out of character too. Like he's immediately, like we're there and he's already like acting desperate, radiating no confidence at all. Like they're asking for things and he's just like, okay, fine.
He's a Lannister. That's a big deal.
That name used to mean something.
And that used to mean something 100 years from
and
now.
And you ran it through the mud.
Yeah.
I will say this. I can imagine a great version of this scene.
Yes.
Because in this world, people joking around with wrestling, these pirates, you could easily picture that suddenly becoming very dangerous. Imagine a version of this where they're joking around and you're laughing, a nervous laughter, because you're like at any moment they might behead him. I don't know what they're going to do. But from my perspective, this scene was 100% played for laughs.
No entire stakes. Sequence. You didn't feel stakes at all. Maybe somebody should have been killed during the wrestling.
Inarguably, and Daniel, I think you're right. Like it could have had more of the feel of like a meeting with the Dothraki. Yeah, I think that's a very similar situation.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It reminds me of Joker in the original Batman. Not original, in Tim Burton's Batman from 1989. Joker was clowning around constantly. He was laughing. But nobody else was laughing. Everybody else was nervous. And when he runs into this museum and starts defacing all the paintings, he's having a great time, but everyone else is afraid they're about to die.
The contrast between playful and dangerous is one that we've seen in film and TV carried out in a really effective way that builds tremendous tension. Why can't you have tension and humor? So many people succeed. Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul did it every single episode. They gave you a feeling of mortal danger combined with humor, often in one breath.
Yeah, like Tuco.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking originally.
This scene could have been a bunch of Tucos.
So Tuco, for anyone who hasn't watched, like Tuco's a local drug lord, basically. Walter White, who's this until recently just a normal chemistry teacher for a high school, he's there meeting with this guy who he knows to be a violent criminal. Who, later in the series, he'll see him murder someone with his bare hands right in front of him. That character is played for laughs plenty of times. But when you see Walter White sitting down to meet with him, your heart is in your throat. Like you can feel the tension and sense of danger. And the best thing about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul was that they actually could scare you.
Yeah.
With the potential for violence and the potential for danger. That takes true skill to like give someone that feeling and true suspense. Why couldn't they do that here?
Yeah, when you're in a world of drugs,
Yeah.
when you're in the world of Game of Thrones, in a tense situation where people are picking sides, you don't want somebody joking around, because what you want is predictability. Someone like Tuco or someone like this Admiral Lohar, you don't want somebody where you can't predict what comes next. So it should be a very scary thing.
Yeah. Tywand, right?
Tyland.
Tyland should be truly afraid in this situation.
I believe he was.
Yeah,
but I believe we were meant to laugh at him.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Why didn't we feel afraid?
Yeah.
Like again, this comes down to a problem with perspective. The show can't decide whose perspective it's telling the story from. And most of the time it just defaults to no perspective. So they're showing us these events that happen to Tyland, right? Tyland?
I think so. I'm losing track now.
So
Screw him anyway.
It's like, yeah, but they're telling the story of this scene, and instead of, you could tell it from the pirates' perspective, which maybe that's what they did, where there is no sense of danger. It's just humorous, and they're poking fun at this guy and screwing around with him. If anything, that's the perspective we're shown, because it's the closest to what we experience, right? So the alternative would be to show it from his perspective, which is, this is really dangerous, and it's also really important that I succeed. But we didn't get that. It was just
it's
a joke.
It's like a total lack of respect for the character and for the plot, because he is there on an extremely important mission, and from the beginning it's just completely played for laughs.
In the behind the scenes, they were saying how much they couldn't wait to do this. Like, we finally bring in some levity, and like for the finale, I don't think any of us are like, we need levity. We haven't laughed once this season. I want some laughs for this finale.
And I think Adam, you were saying, like, I think you explained it right, which is it was almost from the pirate's perspective instead of Tyland's. Like, if they really told it from his perspective, it would have worked.
It would have been, and it would have been scary. Telling it from the pirate's perspective would lead to this being like a clown show, which is what it was.
I'm waiting for a comment to be like, so you're suggesting they should have shot it in like a first person view? Like God, a found footage?
This was these scenes were so stupid. So dumb.
So basically, the let's get back to the plot, I guess, and just here's so basically in exchange for giving the pirates the stepstones, like letting basically allowing the Triarchy to come back and rule, right?
Which that did make me laugh, actually, because that Viserys' whole life, it was always like the stepstones again.
Yeah.
And they finally took care of the stepstones. And they're like, this time we put up barricades or whatever. We set things up so we can hold on to them. And now they're all gone again. They gave him back to the Triarchy. So he did get his army. The Triarchy, the pirates, they are going to help break Rhaenyra's blockade.
Like at a cost that's likely not worth it.
Yeah.
But that's
and at a cost that you can't hold them to it either. Like, they're basically saying, yeah, we'll promise to behave ourselves once we get the stepstones.
Yeah.
Well, and like, I don't know, this is like pretty monumentous, right? Like the stepstones.
Monumental or momentous. You have to pick one.
It was one of those.
It feels like a name in Mad Max, like
Monumentus.
Admiral Monumentus. Go ahead, Daniel.
But like, this was a monumentous thing, and they're making a joke out of it. Like, you don't feel.
It's like it's like giving over Winterfell to someone. It's a big deal.
I don't think it's quite like that.
Actually, I think it is.
I think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It can't be that important.
It was Viserys' biggest problem.
It puts you in control of King's Landing.
Yeah,
You're basically in control of like the mouth of Westeros. Like that's where all the resources come in. Right?
Yeah, and now that's what they were saying.
Well,
Like, we're going to tax everything.
It's like saying, like this, like it's almost become a meme at this point. But Russia needs a warm water port. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Basically, in every history class in America, every student grows up being taught, oh yeah, Russia's motivation throughout history has always been they want a warm water port.
We want the stepstones.
That's why they're like trying to do all this stuff. So
and we'll give it to you, but you have to wrestle us in the mud first.
Yeah, exactly. I think of
that.
the stepstones as basically like the warm water port that the Triarchy, or that like Westeros needs, and that the Triarchy wants to take control of.
Okay.
So that's why I see it as potentially as big a deal as Winterfell. Maybe it's not quite as big because Winterfell is like a whole like kingdom unto itself, I guess. But you know what I mean.
I need the pirates controlling my
Here we
stepstones like I need a hole in the head.
All right, are we ready to head to Harrenhal? So we see Daemon. He's in action for the first time all season. He is just on the move. He's like a guy. They're about to throw a party. It starts in an hour. He's like, okay, put those. He's like Michael Scott before one of their parties. He's like, I need hula dancers over there. Yeah. I need this over there. He's got a big army now. And then remember a few episodes ago, Rhaenyra sent Broom to go check on Daemon, see where he's at.
Yeah.
Is he really on my side still? Broom approaches Daemon, and he, instead of checking on him, he says, listen, you should betray the queen. She's kind of lost it. She's a jerk. She's an idiot. And she smacked, he wasn't there for that.
Who did he slap?
I forget his name.
One of those lords.
My favorite moment with Broom is when he hears like a whisper in the wind, and he's like, did you hear something? And Daemon's basically like, don't worry.
You're asking it, yeah.
So that night, Daemon follows Alice to a weirwood tree, where they spot for a moment an antlered human shape clip-clopping and grumbling, which is what the closed caption said.
The bronies.
Which I quite enjoyed that moment. I don't know what that is. I quite enjoyed that moment, though.
What was it?
Remember, right? It's a blink and you'll miss it.
Yeah.
As they approach the tree, you see this creepy little weird guy with antlers. Like scramble by and then go behind the tree.
Could be something to do with Baratheon.
Okay, say more.
Well, I just know that like the crest of, or like, you know, the Baratheon family's mascot is not an elk, but
something
maybe
with
a
antlers.
Deer or something.
I thought of the children.
Children of the Forest.
Yeah, that's what I assumed it was.
But they don't have
that
antlers.
would be real. No,
but we don't know that
but
in this world. I mean, they're writing the rules here, right?
Yeah.
How much do we know about them via Game of Thrones, the TV show?
Well, we saw Children of the Forest, and they actually showed us this scene with the creation of the Night King.
Right, and they threw the little like
they
short had those little
and they have pointy
grenades,
ears, right? And they're kind of green.
Kind of. Green, yeah, they have like greenish skin, if I recall. But my guess is I think the Children of the Forest is too deep into the supernatural and too deep into the like fantasy aspect for this show to get into it. That said, they're putting a lot of importance on the whole Night King winter is coming thing, so it's not out of the question, but it would be pretty weird for them to actually show a child of the forest on camera, even for a split second. It would be weird for them to be in that place physically.
Yeah. Well, it was also...
But you never know. It could also be some kind of supernatural, cross-dimensional thing.
I mean, whatever they just showed was pretty weird, which is why I liked it, because I have felt like these Harrenhal dreams really... I mean, we did our tier list, which I can link to in the description of all the dreams. I've been craving something more creative and weird. To me, this was the weirdest thing we've seen, and I thought it was just...
I do like that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I enjoyed that moment.
By the way, the sigil of House Baratheon is the stag.
Okay.
Crowned stag. So that's the only thing I can think of that has antlers that has significance in this universe.
Yeah, I just don't know what that would mean. Like, why would you be hinting
I
at
don't
Baratheon
know.
right now? But basically, she essentially lays out what all these dreams have been about. You know, you came here, you were a closed fist, you wanted to govern the world, but now you see the world will not be governed. So she essentially tore him down. He's lost. He doesn't know what he wants, what to do, because the thing he wanted is inaccessible. He can't govern the world. Put your hand on this tree. You'll see what it's all about. It's bleeding. puts his hand on it. Suddenly, you see essentially a mini recap of Game of Thrones. You see a White Walker. You see Rhaenyra on the throne. You see Daenerys with the 3 dragons. And then Helaena shows up and says, "It's all a story, and you are but one part in it. You know your part." And it looks like Daemon might die. You see him fall into some water. When I said this on the instant take, but I've been waiting to see if there's some reveal coming for Alice. Is there somebody behind her? What's her deal?
What if she's a manifestation of Helaena? That's one thing I'd been wondering.
That was my immediate thought. It's not where I landed, though. Where I landed is that Helaena and Alice are just 2 people who, for one reason or another, are plugged into the overarching narrative. So they're just 2 forces that are trying to nudge Daemon.
They're like sensitive to the Werewood network kind of.
Yeah. They're both in
They're sensitive to like the old god kind of spirituality.
Yeah, so Helaena was hanging out and she sees Alice has joined the chat. Okay, let me hop on right now. And then she can enter the dreamscape and help nudge Daemon along. But my immediate thought was, oh, twist. Alice is actually Helaena.
Yeah, that was
She's
my immediate.
reaching out here to push Daemon in the right direction. After this point, Daemon's essentially now plugged it. This is his introduction to the Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
It's an interesting transformation because early on he was very skeptical of Viserys's dreams. When Rhaenyra brought it up earlier in the season, he literally grabbed her by the throat. So to now see him embrace it, it took a season to get there. I think it's appropriate that it took that much time to turn a skeptic into a believer. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I would say it was a rocky road, but they had to get Daemon from the point of being so I don't know. So he's a complicated character, but they had to take him from a point of saying, I'm basically going to go off on my own and potentially commit treason. And basically I want the power for myself. They had to show us how he gets from that to evolving into someone who is loyal to Rhaenyra, wants to defend her right to the throne, and is someone who's focused on the long term of the whole Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah,
so it's a big
himself.
transformation. What's that? Over his own life, or at least over his own ambitions.
Yeah.
So that's a big transition to show, and they put a lot of time into it. And overall, I would say they earned it, but it could have been done much better, but it also could have been a lot worse. So
it is kind of the art. Like, it also makes sense for Daemon. Is like Daemon wanted to be important. Like, he wanted to mean something to somebody. And now he's like, okay, cool. Like, he has this role to play in this big, important story. Like, that kind of makes sense for what Daemon needed.
A calling of some kind.
Yeah.
I remember one line that always stuck with me from season 1 was, I think it was Rhaenyra speaking to Daemon, and she was, or no, maybe it was Daemon's wife before her. But someone said something to him that was like, I know life has perpetually disappointed you, or something like that. Basically, he always wanted something more. Now, what he thought he wanted was power, and the obvious choice is like, I belong on the throne. That's what's going to make me feel significant. But to your guys' point, like, he found something else that he can say, okay, this is a real like metaphysical importance, because the visions I had, both in my dreams at Harrenhal and from touching the werewood tree, gave me a feeling that there's something really important going on. And now I'm being told I have a role to play.
Yeah, I think if you want to be if you're going to analyze a story, a lot of times the language people will use is a character's wants versus their needs. And I think Daemon's a clear example where he has a need. It's subconscious. He's not sure what will fulfill it. And then he has these wants that he thinks will fulfill it. So he's just grasping for different things. At one point, he wants his brother's approval. Does he even want the throne, or does he really just want Viserys to acknowledge him, give him an important role? At one point, he wanted to be hand. But really, did he ever really want the throne, or was that just a cover for him needing some kind of attention and approval? It seems now like he's accepted, this is my path.
So this is a really interesting plot line to look at in comparison to the others, because this is one where the writers greatly took their time. He spent literally the entire season at Harrenhal, and the entire point of his plot was both on a practical level, he had to secure the River Lords and like bolster Harrenhal because it's a strategically important place, et cetera, et cetera. So that stuff happened in terms of plot points. Then the other things that had to happen was a shift in his attitude where he comes out of it now halfway through the series from someone who's been teetering on the edge of treason pretty much since day one. Now he has to become someone who's firmed up his loyalty, his willingness to fight for something greater than himself, etc. So the show deserves praise, I think, for taking time to not just gloss over that. And I think if every other plot in this show was executed as well as this one, we would probably have a lot more positive things to say about the series.
Yeah, if every character was just having dreams all season.
So I think I have a lot of problems with the progression and like the transformation that they showed, in part because so much of it, pretty much all of it, relied on dreams. And dreams, the difference between showing and telling becomes harder to tease apart when you're talking dreams, because now you can like show something to the audience that's not really happening as a shortcut to give them information or insight into someone's head.
Right. Like on this show, if you want to say that Daemon isn't sure he wants the crown anymore, well, you just go to a dream where Viserys is like, are you sure you still want the crown? Versus Better Call Saul, you know, Kim would have picked up the crown and looked at it.
Yeah.
And then she would have put it down.
Yeah. So the difference between showing and telling is complicated and difficult to navigate, and I think it was not navigated perfectly. It had lots of flaws, but overall, they acknowledged that you can't just like suddenly change a character's motivations, that you have to tell a story gradually over time, and go for like keeping the audience in it rather than watching it happen as though it lacks believability.
And you have to drug them. You have to drug them multiple times.
That's right. Yeah.
Just to be safe.
Well, let's go to one of my favorite scenes, and this time unironically. I love this following scene. Cole. Let's check in with Cole.
Oh, yeah.
So Gwayne finds him sniffing Alicent's favor, and suddenly he draws his sword. So how dare you? And then Cole hits him with this. True honor is a mist. I have no philosophy. The dragons dance and men are like dust under their feet. We march now toward annihilation. To die will be a kind of relief. And then Gwayne just sits down all depressed next to him.
I mean, how are you supposed to follow a guy into battle who's saying this kind of stuff?
No,
go ahead.
Well, Cole had such a transformational moment this season when he went into battle and he saw what dragons do. We've been waiting to see what does that do to him. And it kind of shell-shocked him at first. And he could rise to the occasion out of that shell shock, or he can fall into a state of despair. And it seems like that's where he's landed. And I think it's an interesting place for him to land. I think it's very in line with his character. We've seen him do this where he kind of gives up. And so, I don't know. I mean, on a visceral level, I just enjoyed this because it's just so funny to watch. Just to watch Gwayne's immediate transformation to where he's on the same level as Cole by the end of the scene. And where does it go from here? Does Cole just march into battle and die? It would make sense. It would be a sort of dissatisfying end. Or does he somehow come out of this? Does he find a way out?
Thing where it's like he gets very fixated on something as being extremely important to him. And then when it turns out to not be how he pictured, or when it feels like something about his focus has betrayed him, he usually reacts like strongly in a way that compensates, or a way to substitute and fill that vacuum.
Right. We saw that in season 1,
yeah,
where he wanted to be with Rhaenyra, mainly because that way the two of them spent the night together intimately, which is breaking his oath of chastity.
Yeah.
So he's like, I claw back my honor if Rhaenyra agrees to run away with me and we get married.
Right.
When she says no, he doesn't know what to do with himself, and he kills Laenor's lover, essentially. So we've seen, and then he was going to take his own life, and Alicent saved him.
Yeah. And then because of that, like, she saved his life. Now he becomes her lover and her like kind of secret guy on and he now that he can feel that slipping away, or if it hasn't already. Between that, his relationship with Alicent's basically broken, I would say.
I think so. I mean,
reasonable.
we haven't really seen the two of them together in a while, but yeah, it seems like.
And like she's at least said multiple times it has to stop.
Yeah, and he didn't back her up at the council.
Which is kind of, to me, that feels like it's potentially
Yeah,
like a
she
permanent
wanted to
end.
step in as the queen
Yeah.
while Aegon was out of commission, and Cole instead recommended Aemond like everybody else.
Right. And so, for this relationship to fall apart at the same time that he sees the utter like trauma that comes with dragon warfare, that's rough timing. So it's basically like he has like nothing left right now in terms of motivation or realistic goals. So just if he's anything like he has been in the past, I think he'll just find something new to replace it. And in this case, given how like he's, we will die and I for one welcome it. Life is an abyss. Like I think he might kind of be unlocking some mass murderer mode where like his respect for life, his feeling that life has dignity or value, has been so damaged that as in his childish way of lashing out, it might just cause him to take even more life. Because what does it matter anyway? On one level, he knows it's important, that it's a big deal to like harm other people, but on another level, because of his feeling of betrayal by life, it might lead to him just being even worse.
And that was sort of how he reacted, right? When he had that conversation with Alicent after not siding with her to be queen, like he says to her, what we have to do now is terrible. And he did have this nihilism, but also this look of determination. Like he's ready to go fight more.
Like I'm the person to do it. I'm like, he's like becoming death.
Yeah, he's embracing that darkness.
Yeah.
As his calling.
if he overheard all this, he'd be like, I don't know what you guys are talking I just want to die. I don't want to hear anything you guys are talking about. That's all we see of Cole this episode. We might see him marching later during the montage, but that's all the dialogue. Interested to see where he goes next. Let's head over to King's Landing. Check in on Team Green. Aemond, last time we saw him, he saw that Rhaenyra had gained these extra dragons. He's not happy. He's lashing out. He just burned Sharp Point, killed a bunch of innocent people. In the after show thing, I learned that this was not just him lashing out. This is also strategic. It's the seat of House Massey, who serves on Rhaenyra's council. So destroying his hometown was essentially punishment for siding with the pretender, Rhaenyra.
But
big complaints.
They didn't really put a lot of attention on that, right?
No, you just see for a few seconds. You see a burning city, you hear people screaming, and you see Aemond looking at it.
Okay.
So we missed all the good stuff.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yes. Okay. This is.
I barely noticed that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a pivotal moment for Aemond. What we end up seeing is we see a few seconds where I'm like, what's he? He's doing. He's on a dragon. He's like breathing fire or something. And then they're all talking about how he burned down Sharp's Point. This is horrific. He's killing all these innocents. All this stuff. It's like we've not seen Aemond like quote unquote out of control yet. Aemond's always been calculated but ruthless. But we're now supposed to believe, at least the way Alicent describes it, that he's just lashing out and killing all these innocents.
Throwing a tantrum.
Yeah, this is a insanely pivotal turn for Aemond to take. And we're not there with him at all for it. It's just brushed over. So I'm like extremely frustrated if this is like what they're doing to his character.
They glossed over it so much that I didn't even see enough to get upset about it. You know what I mean?
You didn't even know what happened.
Yeah.
You guys know we met Darren this episode? We saw him. We'll get to that later.
Wait, really?
That's just an example of something you guys probably missed. But I caught it because I watched the after show. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't show more of this. I think it would have been... Aemond was an interesting character, I'd say, for the first half of the season. And for some reason, we decided to fast forward past some stuff.
Like, isn't it important to see what he's like once he actually has the throne?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Then why didn't you do it?
Yeah.
Why didn't you show us?
Wait,
For those who are listening, I'm like acting like Gil is the one who came up with this.
well, let's go. Let's brush past this scene as fast as they did. Let's go to Aegon. So Larys comes to him. Hey, Aemond's running around. He's going to kill you. We got to get out of here. And, Aegon doesn't really want to go with him. Let me give this some more credit. Okay, I've kind of just brushing past it. Larys stashed a bunch of wealth over in Bravos, the wealthiest part of the Free Cities. It got mentioned a lot in Game of Thrones. And so, of course, now with Aemond on the rise, Aegon is in a very vulnerable position, and he has been in one. But now, seeing how out of control Aemond is, Aegon's life is very much on the edge right now.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's still alive.
At first, Aegon is unconvinced. He doesn't want to go, barely wants to live. But Larys ultimately convinces him by appealing to reputation, legend, what this could do to Aegon. He could become Aegon the Rebuilder. Essentially, they run away. They let Aemond screw everything up. Everything's going to go to hell under Aemond. And then Aegon will come back,
swoops in,
save the day, and he'll be known as
Aegon
the Rebuilder, or even Aegon the Realm's Delight. A callback because in season 1, when Rhaenyra was a young child, she was known as the Realm's Delight. I was reminded of that by the official podcast. So that's what finally gets him up. And at the end of the episode, we see they do run away together.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just glad we saw Larys.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would say the Larys Aegon thread has been well written.
One of my favorite of the season.
Yeah, like
for sure.
Their interactions, the dialogue between them, it's a very interesting relationship because I think Larys probably does feel a true kinship with Aegon. Seeing him beaten down, vulnerable, permanently disfigured and disabled. Growing up the way Larys did with like the clubfoot deformity would be probably pretty terrible, and I think that's probably why he feels no loyalty to his own,
especially in this world.
It must have been so bad that that's a big part of why he has no loyalty to his family. Like, he stashed all the money away basically in the banana stand. It was supposed to be for his house, and he basically rerouted all of it.
Well, he also killed his whole family.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I forgot about that part. So, yeah, the point is he feels zero loyalty to them, and presumably, in part, it's because of how they treated him. I'm sure this is kind of an overreaction. But so he feels some kinship with Aegon. They have some stuff in common, and most importantly, he needs Aegon to survive for his own purposes.
Well, and more importantly, there's something he really needs from Aegon. Aegon may have lost his gentleman, but he still has his feet.
Yeah, we had to get one more in. I can't hold that against you.
One last foot joke for the season. But so that thread was really well done because that's a complicated relationship. It's a pretty parasitic one, but it puts the parasite in a position where it has to really bolster the Aegon, and help him get back on his feet just enough so that he can keep leeching off of him.
I do like the assumption that if Aemond lets everything go to hell, the Aegon thinks that I'll be able to come back and fix everything. I think in his mind, he's really depending on Larys will know exactly what to do. I'm just going to listen to everything he says. So it's such a complicated plan because they don't know all the pieces that are moving. They don't know that Alicent is out there conspiring to hand the throne over to Rhaenyra.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so I would say overall, I liked this thread through the season.
Yeah.
We had lots of issues here and there with it, but compared to the stuff we talked about at first, everything seems better.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what Aegon will do when he gets back. If he does get a chance to be leader again, what kind of choices will he make? Because, like Cole, he's had a very transformative experience, and we have not yet seen what it's done to his character. I mean, we've seen that in the immediate aftermath of it, he's basically similar to Cole. He's ready to fly into the abyss and just die.
Yeah.
But when he comes out of that, now he's seen this light that Larys gave him. Is he going to be a changed man? Is he going to try and do things differently? Or is he going to be back to his old ways?
And I think a lot of Cole's problems would be solved if his sausage burst open.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to Aemond. So he needs dragons. Now he's getting desperate. They mention a couple times how Helaena, she has a dragon, Dreamfire, great dragon, but she's not going to fly the dragon into battle. She doesn't want to kill anybody. Aemond doesn't want to hear it. He storms into the room and he tells her, I need you on Dreamfire. And she says, I won't burn anyone. Alicent kind of steps in the middle in between them. and it calls out Aemond accurately, I'd say. You're only doing all this because it makes you feel strong. Yes, we need to protect ourselves, but not like this. The official podcast said something that I had the same thought while watching, which is he probably could have offered some kind of middle ground. Like, it's just for show. You need to get on a dragon, but you don't actually have to go and kill anybody. I just need you to be there.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, they'd probably see through it, because I think even Rhaenyra or someone makes the comment, they don't believe Helaena is going to go into battle. What's that, Daniel?
The other thing was, like, he's not even... This is, like, the collapse of Aemond, is he wasn't even trying to be tactful or actually make it work. He just grabs her wrists and just tries to force her to go do it.
Yeah,
Which
it's
is
basically
crazy.
a tantrum. Like, just ride a dragon.
I mean,
Which we've not seen him do before. He doesn't throw tantrums.
Well, we've also not seen him backed into a corner like this before.
Yeah, I mean, we might have been giving him too much credit. Like, just because he has this blind ambition and blind rage doesn't mean he's politically savvy enough to understand, well, how do I get this person to do what I need them to do?
Yeah, I think we saw, I mean, Daniel, you and I talked a lot about how he had these cracks in the facade, right? Where he has been crafting a version of himself to project outward this confidence, this I don't care about anything. And then when he's in Madame Sylvie's arms, he'll admit, I do feel bad about all that Luke business. And so a crafted persona like that only works when things are status quo. And I think now, when the scales have shifted so much, it looks like Team Black is winning this war. That's when he starts to fall apart.
So then that makes sense, but that's my complaint from the beginning, is we needed to see that. Like, we just jumped to him throwing tantrums and stuff. We didn't see him deal with the moment that then broke him.
Right. Like, if we spent more time on him going to that strategic point.
Yeah, like now in retrospect, that feels like a significant event, not just for the plot, but also for his character. So in retrospect, I feel like they should have given us more.
It would have been nice to see the unraveling of Aemond instead of Aemond unraveled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Raveled or otherwise.
after this tense conversation, after the tense conversation between Alicent, Aemond, and Helaena, so Aemond storms off, seemingly giving up for now. Alicent walks over to Maester Orwell and asks for passage. Later, we'll find out where she's going. Later, Aegon goes...
Oh, I did think it was jarring that we suddenly see Alicent is back in King's Landing, because last we saw her, we didn't know what her next move was going to be. Right?
Well, we basically got the idea. Well, we didn't know where she was going, but she went out to Godswood, which is like in the backyard of King's Landing, right?
Oh, see, I guess I didn't have that. I didn't know how far away she was at that point. Once they show the Kingsguard that was with her, like, setting up camp, basically, I had this feeling of like, well, we don't know where she's going to be next.
So we saw her.
She has a waypoint in King's Landing.
She saw a bird.
She unlocked fast travel.
Remember, she was floating in the water. She saw a bird, and then she swam to shore. So, I mean, to me, that was the indication. Okay,
like,
she has clarity.
Yeah.
So she's probably going to go back home or do whatever she's going to do next.
Regroup and then make her move.
Right.
Okay, because when I saw her, I didn't know if, like, is she ever going back to King's Landing again? Like, to me, that was actually up in the air.
Yeah, I think it was up in the air during that. I think for her it was, and then I think she had this idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, which then she'll pitch to Rhaenyra later. So for Aemond, he approaches Helaena again, and he tries a softer approach, appealing to the sympathy. Like, I need to do this. Like, we need to do this together. Come with me to Harrenhal. Let us destroy Daemon and his army. And Helaena asks, if I refuse, will you burn me like you burned Aegon? Aemond accuses her of treason. How dare you? I didn't burn Aegon. She says she saw it, which I assume through some mystical
Through the rats.
method. Through the rats, yeah, exactly. And then she gives him the whole spiel about how there's a grander narrative, there's destiny. Aegon will be king again, and you will be dead, swallowed up in the God's Eye, which is the largest lake of the Seven Kingdoms. Which is interesting, because when it looked like Daemon might be dying in his vision, it seemed like he was falling into water. Mm-hmm. So is it going to be Aemond and Daemon fight each other and they kill each other? Is that what we're building up to? Also interesting, she says Aegon will be king again. Versus in Daemon's vision, he sees Rhaenyra on the throne. Both could be true. Aegon could be king, and then Rhaenyra takes over. Or
maybe
are
they get
these
married.
visions...
Yeah, I was thinking that.
or they get married. Are these visions truly showing the future, or are they just meant to guide you to your fate? I mean, obviously we saw things in those visions that we know come true, but could it be a mix of truth and also a mix of we need Daemon to bend the knee to Rhaenyra, so let's show him Rhaenyra on the throne, even though we know that Aegon's going to end up there.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And the most likely answer, which is the one kind of established in the Song of Ice and Fire universe, is that it's a mix. Prophecy is a real thing, but the visions you get are often very murky and clouded and don't always reveal the truth.
Yeah.
But it definitely sounds like she's continuing to see things and have visions. And I mean, if she's saying that that Aegon or
Aegon.
that Aemond will die and be swallowed up in the God's Eye, she's probably right. I don't think we don't have to make the assumption like you suggested, that maybe Daemon and Aemond will neutralize each other, but that would be very appropriate end for them if they ended up killing each other together.
Yeah, it's been a very one-sided rivalry, I feel like. I don't know. Well, actually, you know what? I take that back. We don't really see Daemon mention Aemond that much, whereas Aemond is like, my foe waits for me.
Yeah.
But we had that dream.
Exactly.
Where Daemon saw himself as Aemond.
Yeah.
So it does feel like destiny. They have to face each other at some point.
It's like the Mountain and the Hound.
Yeah, that's right. And that led to a great conclusion.
Yeah.
So he tells her, I could have you killed. And she says it won't change anything. It does seem like Aemond is not as far along on his journey as Daemon. Daemon has come to a point where he appreciates the visions. Then he believes in the grander story.
Mm-hmm.
Aemond, I'm not sure where he stands yet. To what extent does he put stock in what Helaena just told him? And to what extent does he think that she's crazy?
I think the only way Aemond could get Helena's cooperation is if let's say he really did have some kind of vision of the Song of Ice and Fire. I don't think things will go that direction, but it would take something dramatic like that to get him to support Aegon's claim to the throne again. If Helaena could somehow be convinced that Aemond is giving up his personal ambition and getting back on the side of like, yeah, Aegon's the rightful heir and I'll do whatever I can to support him, she might change her mind. But that, I think he doesn't even have a hope of pretending like that's what he wants.
She needs to get him a new bed. I made this out of werewood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he needs
yeah.
to drink some of that moon juice or whatever.
One more thing just on Helaena. It does seem like she's gotten more cognizant of her ability. She no longer just says random nonsense out loud. That's like a riddle you have to figure out. It seems more like she's very in tune with it, to the point now where she can just explicitly say, you're going to die. Not, you'll have to close the God's eye in order to,
He'll have to
what?
close
What did
an
you say?
eye.
Why are you talking like that? You guys ready to head over to Driftmark / Dragonstone? I'm going to lump them together.
Why not?
Smell that salt and sea.
Smell those little birds that Ulf can't get enough of. He's being very disrespectful. He's got his feet on the table, and Jace is like, stop it, show respect. Which I guess Ulf and Hugh have just been given reign of the castle and they're just walking around.
It's like
no orientation.
It's like if you're a kid and like you have your friend over, and suddenly, like your parent is doting on them and giving them all kinds of like treats and candy and treating them really nicely, and you're like, hey, you don't treat me like that when I'm here, when it's just me here.
Right.
It's like suddenly the stranger's come in and he's trying to take my place. He's putting his feet up on the table.
I'm
He's
always
getting
asking
royal
you to make
treatment.
little birds. You never
Yeah.
give me little birds, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden Ulf is here. He gets whatever he
He
wants.
gets as many little birds as he wants.
Yeah. Well, I see where Jace is coming from. Obviously, this would be very frustrating, and I was frustrated. I was like, these doofuses walking around.
Hey.
Go ahead.
Only one of them was being a doofus.
That's true. He
only,
was actually being very respectful.
Yeah.
Which,
But I
by
mean-
the way, makes me trust Hugh less.
I agree. Well, I don't know about less, but I just from the get-go, I don't trust you very much. In Ulf's case, I think he's probably well-meaning and could really end up being on their side as Team Black. But but clearly, like, they're showing he comes from a background that has no idea about royalty,
Right.
has no idea what the proper way to act is. Somehow Hugh is at least aware of it.
Yeah,
Probably because of his line of work, he has, the people who are, right, he's a blacksmith.
And he dealt with he would meet with the king.
Yeah.
Right. He's
Well,
dealt.
and the only people who are buying anything from him have to be the wealthy ones
Right.
and like lords and stuff.
But I think I probably trust Hugh more, the most out of all of them right now, because he's the one with an axe to grind. Like, his child died because Team Green didn't come through on their promise to give them money and to give them food. So
the only reason I don't trust him is because they showed him assault a random stranger for food.
he was hungry.
Yeah, I know, and he has to support his kid's life. So like, I can't really blame him that badly. Like, I would probably also physically like do that if I had to save my child's life. But they made a point of showing that he's a little bit of a loose cannon.
And this might not be what the writers intended, but this is what we saw, is like when Hugh decided to go and try to become a dragon rider, his motivation was not to take care of his family, right? Like, his motivation was, I have to do this for me. I have to make a name for myself. And then at the same time, it's like we never really saw him mourn his daughter. So it kind of makes me think like he doesn't care about anybody else and he wants power.
He did also say to his wife, like, you'll be treated like a lady. And she was like, I don't care about that. But you never know. That could be just, it could be.
Maybe she did before. Maybe she did say things like that.
Well, that's not where I was going with that. I was saying this is Corlys syndrome, where he keeps saying, I'm doing it for you, I'm doing it for you.
Yeah.
And then finally acknowledges, I'm really doing it for me. Right?
It's like Breaking Bad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even this moment, like we were just describing with Hugh, is like Breaking Bad, where very early on in that series, Walt was given a way out, where he was offered money, and he didn't take it. So clearly he's doing it for himself.
Yeah.
Speaking of Corlys, by the way, Rhaenyra goes and talks to him. Probably the first time since she made him hand, she is looking to him for handy advice. She basically says, we've claimed the dragons. Okay, this guy, Adam, you might have heard of him. Corlys is like, Adam? I don't know if I even know who that guy is. Why would you even say that? Rhaenyra says, we won the war. Corlys says, what? Aemond's not going to just stop because you got a few extra dragons. And she's like, you're right. Also, Corlys' ship repairs are almost done, and he's renamed it from the Sea Snake to the Queen Who Never Was. I really appreciated that moment. I thought that was the kind of emotional moment you want in a finale. That's him putting a bow on, I'm no longer doing this for myself. I'm honoring Rhaenys' memory. I'm carrying on with the things I think she would have wanted me to carry on with.
Yeah.
I think the moment might have landed better if he didn't spell all that out. I always did this for my own glory, but now I rename it in the honor of my wife. Remember that she died, and now I'm naming my boat after her. If he just said, it's not the Sea Snake anymore, it's the Queen Who Never Was.
Yeah. I
think that would have landed. Either way, though, I quite like that moment. I will say, I don't know if I want to complain about this. I already did on the instant take, but I felt it's a little naive that Rhaenyra, it seems like she honestly thought the war was over. Like they were going to just lay down their arms. And like, that's so naive. Alun's point on the instant take is that maybe she's just lying to herself, which is a powerful tool. Like she was almost bashful, I feel like, when she said it to Corlys, like the war's over, right? She knew it wasn't, but she needed somebody else to say it. All right, I'll go with it. Let's stick with Corlys for a minute. Later in the episode, he goes to Adam. Basically says, let's be on good terms. We've been on bad terms. He still doesn't call him son, but he essentially acknowledges, I wasn't there for you. I want to help you now. Let's be on good terms. And Adam says, good terms, you say? Were good terms supposed to put food on the table? Were good terms supposed to be there when no one came to watch my baseball games as a kid? And Corlys is like, I don't think you know what the word good terms means. All right, so basically Adam is upset because all of a sudden Corlys wants to be his dad. Probably motivated in part by trying to live up to what Rhaenys wanted. Because she essentially said, you got to stop punishing them for who they are. And so he's trying to make up for lost time. You can't just swoop in and do that. So Adam gives a whole monologue about how terrible his life was. And while he's struggling to put food on the table, he has to watch Corlys treating his legitimate children very well. I will say there's a little bit of the Mysaria syndrome for me here, where it's a monologue about hardship that we didn't see.
Yeah.
And so it's just like watching somebody get on stage and do a one-man show. Having said that, I do think that Abu Bakr Salim, the actor who played father in Raised by Wolves, so we are always in his corner.
I knew he looked familiar.
I think he killed the scene. I think he did a great
Yeah.
job delivering the monologue. Also, not to rank one over the other, but Mysaria's monologues are usually pretty one note. They're just very sad.
Yeah.
Very sad. But his was a bit of an emotional roller coaster. You see the sadness, then he gets angry, then there's resolve. And so I thought he killed it. There's just a little bit of I don't feel super invested in this relationship. It's like I just found out about this Adam guy.
Like the acting can only carry this so far.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like a very recent invention. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing the climax of this relationship I barely knew anything about until very recently.
I think there's a limit to how many characters you can really get us to feel invested in. So even if they tried harder to, with this Adam character, we only ever see him doing two things. He's either on the dock, just like working on scrubbing the poop deck as usual, or he's talking with Alan about this feeling of what it's like to be this bastard, essentially, and how it feels unjust to him.
Right.
And,
Or Adam's always
he
been
has
the
a
one
chip
who's
on his
like,
shoulder.
well, Alan has the chip on his shoulder.
Well,
no, sorry. I've been misspeaking this entire time. This monologue was Alan.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
Alan. Sorry,
Yeah.
Adam is the one who has the dragon. So a lot of times,
gotcha.
Adam has bemoaned like we deserve better, etc.
Yeah.
Alan has been very much like I've accepted who I am. I'm doing what I want to do. I don't strive for anything more.
Yeah.
Built a good life
So-
for myself.
So yeah, what I meant was Alan has like this chip on his shoulder, and this complex where it's basically like, well, if he doesn't want to acknowledge that I'm his son, I'm gonna act like he doesn't even exist, and like everything that I earn is coming from my own labor, et cetera, et cetera. Which I think it makes sense that he would feel that way. But we basically just saw him griping about that with his brother Adam, or we saw him just like working on the deck. So they didn't really give us that much to feel like what he's talking about.
His performance did a lot of work though. Like I really did like the scene.
Yeah.
The scene in isolation was well done.
Yeah, what you were saying about we keep seeing him here, it reminded me how a lot of the characters this season feel very pinned
Yeah,
to one location.
it's like they just live in this one spot.
Except for the characters who zip all around the map.
Yeah. But they could have shot all of Alan's scenes like in like 4 hours.
Yeah,
Just
in
set up
one
the set
place.
once and shoot it
Yeah.
all. I'm sure the people who had to set that thing up over and over and just like toiled over it. They're like,
Yeah.
it did not take 4 hours.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to Jace. Bela calls him out for pouting. And, we know what he's pouting about. The same thing that's been going on the last few episodes. I'm a bastard, but I was special because I had a dragon. Now I'm a commoner. You're not common. You're noble. Tries to cheer him up. Yeah. Nice scene. I thought it felt pretty genuine. Any thoughts on this, Daniel? Bela, Jace?
I guess I'm wondering, like, what does it serve to see this happen? Like, for Jace to make this point again. I think maybe in part it's just in contrast to like Ulf's behavior in Dragonstone. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess he needs. I'm looking at my notes here, and I couldn't even understand what these meant, but now I'm remembering. I think we need Jace. He's been stuck as a character right now.
Yeah.
He's just stuck in this mode of like, I am no longer special. And I think that's not the correct way to think about life. You're not special based on what other people do. You're special based on what you do. He needs to stop comparing himself to other people. How do you transform a character and get him out of that? Part of it is what we see here, is people calling you out, giving you a pep talk. So I think this is just one small step in the right direction, but it's going to take more than this, obviously.
I guess, okay, Jace's last expression of his self and independence was when he went and made side dealings with the Freys, right?
Yeah.
And so we had that.
We should also give him credit for it was his suggestion to go find other dragon riders.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's taken a couple of steps and done some independent things and exercised his own judgment. Now he's back feeling like he's not that person anymore. He's back feeling like, well, my specialness is being taken away. So I think probably what we're going to see is a similar reaction. We're going to see him do something that feels like he's taking the reins and being more self-determined.
Right. With the big battle looming, he might find a way to insert himself into the action.
Basically, we're going to see him act without permission.
Yeah. Now, I will say that Bela's advice, though, I actually feel like she didn't give him entirely the correct advice because she reassures him by saying, like, you're noble born. And I'm like, no, that's not.
The whole point is he knows he isn't. And like, he deserves some credit for, he accepts who he is.
Yeah.
I think some people would find the truth of, to learn that you're a bastard. Some people, and that the person you thought was your father isn't your father. In his case, I guess it was so obvious he couldn't deny it. But there are a lot of characters who would never admit to it because it'd be too hard for them. They'd just live in denial.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one thing that gives me this feeling of potential for Jace's character is that he has the insight and self-awareness to be able to openly admit to it when it's not harmful, but like when it's among family. He can openly recognize that his true father is a strong.
Right.
And having that gives him more power to really determine his fate, because at least he's willing to face the truth from the get-go.
He's related to Laris. Just never occurred to me.
Oh, yeah.
That's his uncle.
That's weird.
One point of clarification. When I said that her advice is bad because she reassures him that you're noble born, I'm not saying it's bad advice because of the accuracy. I mean, to some extent, he is noble born. I mean, Rhaenyra is his mother. But my point is that that shouldn't matter. Like, she should get him off that. Like, don't worry about your heritage. Don't worry about whether you have a dragon or not. It's about what you go out and do in the world. Like, stop trying to be.
You create your own impact on this world.
Yeah, but this is a world where like your bloodline matters. Is like.
Yeah, but his doubts are
it.
about his bloodline. Like, he's got a problem there. Just reminding him, yeah, okay, but your mom is the queen. It's like, yeah, I knew that already.
Daniel's, he's on, yeah. Well,
Jace is, he's not looking for solutions. You got to just listen to his problems and tell him you understand.
Right.
Don't try to solve it. You can't always solve it.
Well, I think she's far from solving it. So at least on that track, she got it. All right, we go to dinner with Rhaenyra, Ulf, and Hugh. And Jace. Ulf is being an oaf, just like before. Rhaenyra says that if you serve me well, I'm going to make you knights. And what do they have to do? What does serve me well mean? It means go to Old Town and Lannisport, kill a bunch of innocent people. She says that those are the strongholds, which I didn't fully. I get the thrust of this. The thrust of this is go kill innocent people as a big show of force to basically get rid of their motivation and end this war. I was confused just why she says they're strongholds, but it sounds like they're painting it as just going and killing innocent people. But wouldn't that mean that if they're strongholds, wouldn't that mean they are protected? Or is the idea
not protected against dragons?
They're not protected against dragons. So that's the idea, is that we just have this major weapon. We know they're defenseless against it. So I guess that's it, right? That makes sense.
Yeah, but the going after innocent people thing seems like kind of a stretch for Rhaenyra to just decide that that's okay.
Specifically say that.
Well, that is definitely the thrust of the scene. Like that's the moral quandary. That's why they're hesitant about it. I didn't see it as a stretch. Actually, is
that in her character at this point? Has she like kind of gone far enough down this road that she will just of her own accord come up with this idea?
Maybe it would be nice if there was another scene. Okay, because we did see her like 20 minutes ago. She was hoping that the war is over. And now she's ready to go burn a bunch of...
Yeah, and to be charitable, I would say, she knows that this is a sacrifice that is offset by putting an end to the war. It's like it's at least logically similar to dropping the atomic bomb in World War II. Like the argument was, it's a huge loss of life, but if it brings an end to the war, then in the total,
Yeah.
it's saving.
You know
lives.
what? Yeah, I take it back. I think this is totally in her character. The whole point is that she knew what's necessary to fight war, and she hasn't wanted to do it. Now that it's been pointed out to her and she accepts, they're not going to just stop fighting. The thing I didn't want to do, we have to now go and do.
Now, I find it interesting that she would leave this up to these 2 new dragon riders who are totally like untrained and untested. But she's also desperate and doesn't really have much of a choice. And it's less of a risk because they're not her family.
Yeah, you don't want to send Jace or Bela out there to get
So
killed.
if you think of this as like, this is an important part of her character's arc this season. It's going from, first of all, I like that she spent half the season just trying to prevent war.
Yeah.
And then even once war broke out, she tried to like undo it and make it right by traveling to King's Landing.
Right.
Now, okay, very, very clumsy. We didn't like that. But at least in terms of just the things her character would do and her attitude about all this senseless violence and destruction, we see a nice gradual development to the point where she's been hardened by the war and has broken that seal of loss of innocent life, and it can now do the calculus and just say, okay, if this can put a stop to it, then go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's believable. It's a believable progression.
I feel like we started so against the episode that now each scene we're like, does that work? Is this good? Instead of starting from a position of like, let's just deal with the scene and like talk about the characters, we start from the point of, did this suck?
Do we accept it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I didn't feel that while watching it. I didn't feel that way at all. I was actually quite into the episode.
Yeah.
This is a good scene. Nothing wrong with this scene.
I mean, the interesting thing with the show is like, point by point, most of what happens isn't that wild, and like I can get behind it if it's portrayed in the right way. So when you look at just like a bulleted outline of everything that happens in the series, it's not that outlandish, but the execution makes it hard to swallow.
Right. Well, speaking of swallow, at the end, I just want to point out that at the end of this scene, you can pick it up if you have closed caption. Right before it cuts, Ulf says, "Birds."
He's asking for more.
He just wants more birds. Okay. Well, I should also mention that they get a message from Harrenhal. Simon fears treachery because Sir Simon Strong was there when Broom asked Daemon to betray Rhaenyra.
I like Simon.
I like Simon too. I have to say, I think I should have pushed back harder on Alun, because on the instant take, he was like, I don't care if he's right. Simon should not speak ill of the king consort. He should not be going to Rhaenyra and saying that Daemon is thinking of committing treason. She should have his tongue for that. He should be killed for that. And I'm like, I
would say like potential treason is like the one thing he should.
Yeah.
You know, if you have the king consort's confidence and he's telling you something where it's like, if you tell anyone about this, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
Then you tell no one unless it's treason.
Yeah,
then you
that's,
tell.
that's the one exception.
Yeah, I'd fear Alun in power. Alun sounds tyrannical.
You're basically saying, I can't trust you because you're afraid to offend me by suggesting that someone close to me is going to betray me. But if they actually are going to betray me,
then you gotta tell me.
And that was a very real risk. But before Daemon had the vision, maybe he would have betrayed her.
Oh, I think he was planning to.
Yeah. Well, she gets that message. So she's had enough. She grabs Adam to fly around as kind of a guard when she goes to Harrenhal to confront Daemon. She sees the big army, so he got his army. Good job, Daemon.
Woo!
He finally did it. Nobody thought he could. And he makes his way through the army, slowly walking toward Rhaenyra. And he's been here before. We've seen the slow walk toward Viserys, where you're not sure what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Is he going to bend the knee? Is he going to challenge them? Daemon says to Rhaenyra, they're all sworn to me. And she says, and to whom are you sworn? And then you know things are getting serious because he speaks High Valyrian. He says, winter is coming. The realm's only hope is a leader who can unite it. And my brother, we all know he has great judgment, and I would never doubt anything he says. My brother chose you. Daemon bends the knee. Triumphant moment.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and does a great speech for every One of us they kill, we're going to kill 100. We fight for our queen. I love this scene.
Yeah, that was good.
This is one of my favorite scenes of the season.
I love a good like pump up speech, like in like a military context.
In the pump up speech was just a bow on top of an already great scene.
Yeah.
And it's always exciting when somebody bends the knee in front of a big crowd.
Especially when it's unexpected. And what I mean, in this case, I think it was expected to us. By this point, after the vision, we knew which way he was going, but it was unexpected to Rhaenyra, and I felt it from her point of view. I also think Daemon is very self-aware. It's almost like he knows there's cameras on him. Because effectively there's a whole crowd of people watching him.
He knows this is a display. Definitely.
Yeah. But not only that, I think there's a part of him that just personally enjoys keeping everybody on their toes.
Oh, I think he loves the feeling that you described where he's walking in and you don't quite know what he's planning.
Exactly.
He knows that that's the vibe he's giving.
He's got a little smile. He's soaking it up.
Yeah.
He wants to keep even Rhaenyra on
the
her
wild
toes.
card.
Yeah. Am I going to bend the knee? I don't know. Oh, I got to tie my shoe. One second. Yeah. It's like Jim when Pam wasn't sure when he was going to propose
Will
to her.
they, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't feel suspense because I knew what he was going to do, but I felt anticipation on Rhaenyra's behalf, and I was ready for this triumphant moment of finally he's doing the right thing.
It's a big payoff. It was all season this was like brewing.
Yeah, you had to tear him down to nothing, get rid of any direction in his life, give him a direction, and now we see the payoff.
Yeah, and I think most of us, if we had to bet, would have predicted that he will end up supporting Rhaenyra. But it wasn't 100% obvious, and there was legitimate suspense around that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where I fell. I mean, to me, there was suspense. I think
there was. What I'm saying is that it's hindsight, so I'll never know for sure. But I think if I had to guess, I would have predicted his loyalties would eventually lie with Rhaenyra.
Yeah, I think especially in this season, once the dreams start, you're like, what is the point of all these dreams?
Yeah.
I think it points heavily in that direction.
Right.
But
my point is that this is one of the things that does feel earned. The fact that this moment is significant, that everyone's bowing down essentially through Daemon to Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
They worked hard for this moment, and you know, it was a rocky road, but I think overall it succeeded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this was the closest to one of my favorite scenes in season 1. I mentioned it on the instant take, but when Viserys decides to take the throne one last time, and he's slowly walking up there, he drops the crown, and Daemon picks it up for him. To me, this was not quite to the same level, but in season 2, maybe it's the closest I got to that feeling. Mm-hmm. Then Rhaenyra goes to Mysaria. She tells her, "You're awesome. The gods favor you, and they put the means to victory in your hands. But to claim it, I must kill thousands. But you must prevail. Don't let the realm fall to those who want power more than peace." And Rhaenyra says, "And who pays the price?" So all that moaning we did earlier, we're not saying, is this in her character that she would just go kill a bunch of innocent people? There it is. She is not totally comfortable
Yeah, they
with it.
pointed the camera at that, all right?
Yeah.
So quit your whining.
No, this was fine. I thought this was a fine scene, actually. What? Go ahead. What are your
Well, it was
I'm just-
unscripted, you know.
Yeah, they were supposed to make out in this scene, but instead it became a political dialogue. I just have a problem with Mysaria as like the queen's most trusted advisor still, and this is like well trodden ground, and I'm not going to get too into it. But so it's hard for me to like buy into scenes that involve her, just because I found it unrealistic how quickly she became so trusted.
Right.
But you know,
This is one of
if
those
I
we're
put
here
that
now.
aside, like
Yeah.
we're here now, and from there, like this makes sense.
Yeah.
And they're showing us, like you said, that it wasn't just an obvious choice for Rhaenyra or an easy choice to sacrifice innocent lives.
Right. And this speaks again to, you know what? I'm just repeating myself. So let's go to the next scene. That night, you're not going to believe who's at the door. It's your old friend Alicent. She decided to come visit in Dragonstone.
And now, did we not talk about this possibility?
We did. We specifically said, well, when she saw the bird and swam back to shore, we specifically said, I hope she's not going to Dragonstone. So Alicent gives a pitch. I was raised to follow a set path. I resented you for not doing that, for knowing what you wanted to do. I only knew what I was expected of me. I don't know if that was grammatically correct. I don't know why I'm doing this in the tone of like, this is dumb. This is actually, I loved, so the fact that this is essentially a repeat of that previous scene where Rhaenyra went to go see Alicent, but it's in reverse. Initially, Rhaenyra was the one coming with a proposal. She was the one trying to drive the conversation forward. Alicent was the one that was not really willing to listen. Now it's totally reversed. Alicent is the one pushing for it. And I think it's cool that you've been able to craft a season that is able to flip the characters.
Yes.
That's what's exciting to see. We don't want to see static characters. We want to see the relationships be dynamic.
One thing this show is very good at is building up these dual character, like these implicit analogies between characters. You have Aemond and Daemon, just as like one of the most obvious examples.
Right,
but the Alicent and Rhaenyra contrast is also very interesting.
Yeah,
Aaron,
especially
Eric and Eric.
Oh, Eric and Eric. But the contrast between or the timing of it is also very interesting because Rhaenyra kind of finally realized, like, okay, yeah, this is war. I have to rip the Band-Aid off and accept the death of innocents because now I'm just doing the cold hard calculation of how do I save the most lives? How do I get back in charge of the throne so that in the really big picture, I'm preventing this apocalypse with the White Walkers.
Right.
just to specify. So the timing is very interesting because I think she finally like accepted that there's no going back.
Right.
Right as Alicent shows up and is like, we have to go back.
Yeah. So Alicent. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say, Alicent has been essentially passive for many episodes now because she hasn't been allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
Right. She was on the council at the beginning of the season. People aren't even listening to her anyway, and then by the end, she's pushed out of it. So I've been waiting for her to do something, and I think what she's done here is a pretty monumental, or to take monumentous, right? It's a pretty monumentous move here, where she is now arranging for King's Landing to be handed over. So here's what happens in the conversation. She says that she has decided to take Helaena and Helena's daughter. 3 of them are going to run away together. They want to get away from all of this crap. Aemond is soon going to fly out to join Cole in the Riverlands. While he's gone, come to King's Landing. We will put our arms down and let you take the war. Take the throne. The war is over.
It's an interesting thought, and it's believable that she might think that. And I think it doesn't. It begs the question of the audience, which is like, well, what does it really mean to be in charge of Westeros? Just physically getting to the throne doesn't solve anything.
Well, so then there's one more step in this plan, and Rhaenyra points it out. And this is another moment in the season that I would call out as one of my favorite. I think it was executed very well. And what I'm asking for is to feel something. I felt a lot in this moment, and I thought they let the moment sit there for a long time, which was very appropriate. So Rhaenyra says, what of Aegon? Of course, the current king has to die if I'm going to sit the throne.
Yeah.
And I'll say for a moment, I hated Rhaenyra. I'm not saying this in it didn't feel organic way, but her delivery of like, you got to kill Aegon. And Alicent's like, I think we can convince him. And she's almost petulant. Rhaenyra's like, still you defend him. It's like, you're talking about killing her son. Yeah. And you're like a petulant child. Like, we have to kill him. So I kind of hated her for a moment. She won me back a little because toward the end of the conversation, you see her crying. So it is tearing her up inside. But it was hard not to be completely on Alicent's side in that moment. But she basically says, make a choice. What are you going to do? And there's a long silence. Like I said, an appropriately long silence until eventually, without saying it, Alicent accepts the deal.
And yet they don't have Aegon. They can't do it.
I know. That's the thing, yeah.
Now, I really like the scenes where the two of them are together. Mm-hmm. Like, acting-wise, they have a lot of chemistry. And we have so much baggage and background from them as children that we saw, too, from the previous season. So as much as I have these complaints about the circumstances, I really like seeing them on screen together. You know?
Yeah.
And, like, they have so much to discuss. Like, when in every like movie that you watch where a huge plot point is driven by a misunderstanding, you watch it and you're like, I wish I could just take the two characters, plop them in a room together, and make them understand where the other's coming from. So here you actually get to have that.
Yeah, and it's as messy as you'd want it to be because you know that people aren't logical. Even if there is a misunderstanding, you're emotionally attached to your understanding of things.
Yeah.
So, and I love the messiness of this is that two ships passing in the night Better Call Saul reference I made earlier in the season. It's the same thing again where maybe you're ready to go meet with the person and bury all your previous conflicts and get along now. Maybe they're not ready for that. And that's how it was earlier. Rhaenyra was ready for it. In episode 3, I think, Alicent was not. And so the relationships are messy.
The tragedy of the timing.
Yeah, exactly. So the relationships are appropriately messy. So great scene, I thought.
Yeah, I think in isolation it was a great scene.
Yeah. Let's specify. Well, this is where we get to the end of the episode now. There's a montage. You see everybody preparing for war. You see Hugh do that great thing where you put on a leather glove and you squeeze it and it goes like... You see Adam, you see Ulf, you see Rhaena running. You see the Starks, a lot of gray beards, literal gray beards.
That's true.
That's what they were called, and they have the beards to prove it. You see Daemon and his army. You see Tyland on a boat. You see
Otto in his dungeon.
In a dungeon, perhaps. You see Larys and Aegon on the run. It's so funny that like you have such an intense moment.
Yeah.
Like, should we kill Aegon or not? And meanwhile, he's like, boop, boop, doo, just leaving.
It was a little jarring to see like Aegon is suddenly in this carriage. It makes this is not a criticism. I really wasn't expecting to see Aegon out of bed for a long time. But I mean, I know it was probably felt like he was going to die the whole time, but Larys had no choice but to drag him out of bed and get him to safety.
Yeah, I felt good seeing them.
Yeah, I like the idea. It's like an unlikely
duo.
It's an unlikely duo. Yeah,
Just imagine the feeling of like I am not in King's Landing. I'm just like, this is awesome. I'm seeing the open fields. I just like no one's trying to kill me. This is great. I wouldn't even want to go back.
Like a buddy cop movie of the two of them, like exploring Essos together.
Please do not give them ideas.
It'll be like
They
Thor
are
Ragnarok.
Dying for more Game of Thrones
Yeah.
spin-offs. We see Larys and Aegon. Okay.
Darren.
I'm getting there. So at one point you see, I believe it's the you see a dragon flying. And that's Darren's dragon.
Ah.
So he's presumably on it. All right, there you go.
Do we see? We can't see Darren. He's not cast
You can't
yet.
see him. No. They probably didn't cast him yet. I will say in the after show thing, the showrunner was the only reason I knew it was Darren because of the after show thing. The showrunner said, "You see Alicent's fourth son," which is misspeaking. He meant
not the fourth.
He meant fourth child. Like they don't even come up with this Darren existing until this season. They misspeak, and this kid barely even exists. And then we end on some more Dune music. And
Oh yeah.
all right, so
Fremen music.
obviously everybody was very upset that we didn't get actual war because it feels a lot like at the end of season 1. All right, this war is actually happening. They
Really
drew blood,
Titillating.
and then it was like, wait. We need some dream sequences. We need people zipping all over the place. You know, nobody wants this war except for you. In the audience,
bloodlust.
Lowest common denominator. I need to see battles. If nobody dies, it's not a real finale.
What? You're only showing male genitalia? This is a waste of my time.
But don't worry, season 2 is going to have it all, baby. And then the end of season 2 is you lowest common denominator morons. You want war. They did say season 3 will be all out war. It's coming. Now, I will say, even putting aside what we said at the beginning of this, where I was kind of like, I don't really care anymore, so that's why it didn't bother me, the cliffhanger. I think, in general, I'm not that annoyed by this kind of thing anymore, because I just assume...
I don't feel like there's a cliffhanger, really.
Well, there's about to be a war.
That's not a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's not really-
cliffhanger is like, did the so-and-so live or die?
That's true, yeah. You know what? You're right. Cliffhanger is not the right word. I'm just trying to take...
maybe what you're thinking of is like a delayed gratification.
Yes. But what the word people are using, though, is cliffhanger.
Oh.
So I'm saying publicly people are
Yeah.
probably using the wrong word. It definitely feels like a cliffhanger because you feel that same sense of, why aren't you showing me what happens next? That is not what I judge the show on, to be honest. I am taking the show as the story. Okay, because this is how reality works. At some point, the story goes on pause, and now I'm waiting for the rest of the story. Is this a weird place to pause? Yes, but I wouldn't have wanted them to pause earlier, and I'm assuming that pausing later wasn't an option. And if anything, I would have wanted, a lot of our complaints stem from we want more. So I don't want them to rush things.
Yeah,
so
and
I would
this is
prefer
not
that
a-
I have to wait for the next part than they pull the battle in sooner.
And
What
why
was
is this
that,
a
Daniel?
weird place to? Why is this a weird place to stop?
Well, because everybody's been waiting for the war. It's finally about to happen. And doesn't that feel like a big battle would be a great way to end a season in terms of a finale?
Well, especially
Yeah.
just keeping with tradition, you would, if there is no big battle in the second to last episode of the season, then a lot of Game of Thrones watchers' feelings would be, well, then it has to be in the final episode.
And I think it's doubly just makes you cock an eyebrow when it's a shortened season. It's 8 episodes. Typically, it's 10. So a lot of people feel shortchanged. Now, I am trying to. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I am misstating this opinion. It's not how I felt. In part, again, because at the end of the season, I was sort of not as into it, but also in part because I think I'm just used to watching TV this way. I'm used to big waits. It's going to be a couple years before we see what happens next. So I'm just like, okay, story's on pause. We'll come back to it. If the story's good, I'll be happy.
Yeah, my problem with it is not about where they position the break in terms of in relation to the events that have happened and the events that are coming up.
Right.
My problem is just that the break is so long and they didn't leave. I mean, this is really a problem with the series. They just haven't built up enough addiction in me to give me the feeling I would have had if this was Game of Thrones, where they put me on a break and now I'm like, okay, it might be 2 years before I see what happens next.
Yeah.
I'll have no choice but to just read as much as I can,
Theorize
and all this
speculate.
stuff.
Yeah.
They didn't. I want to feel that, but they didn't get me all the way there. Now, I will say, having talked about the episode, I actually have more anticipation now for the next season than I did before. So this is one of those rare episodes where the more we digested it, the more into it I got. I think in part it helped to get all of my complaints out of my system from the
Yeah.
get-go. So now I'm not complaining about the cliffhanger or lack of a cliffhanger, however you want to talk about it. I just think 2 years is too long. That's all.
Yeah, in general, I think that's a problem. I think of what I heard is that they used to be much more proactive about making future seasons. So if this were the Game of Thrones days, they would have been working on the next season while this one was airing. I think for budgetary reasons, it's not being done that way. Oh, and we talked about this. Oh, last night we talked about this, where they were like, yeah, but if we work that proactively, we have to work on the show all year round.
Yes, just like the rest of us do.
Exactly. But I will say there are mixed messages about why the season was shortened. They said it was for story reasons. We felt this was the right way to tell it. But if you keep going back in time, you can find other interviews where they were much more open about the fact that, we had a big battle planned for the season and HBO made us push it out till next season. So it does seem like the quote unquote cliffhanger, the delayed gratification was, my opinion right now, I can't prove it, but my vibe off everything I read is that it was budgetary. It was HBO telling them, we can't have a big battle. You have to push that till next season. Which I think is, I will say, as much as I'm okay with it, I think it's a big mistake.
If that's the case and that it wasn't for storytelling reasons, then I would say it's very disappointing.
Yeah, disappointing in HBO, and I think a very bad decision because I feel like IPs are just burning down left and right.
Yeah.
Every big IP, people are like, I don't care about that anymore. That sucks. You know what? This is surprisingly good. Why do anything to rock the boat? Sea Snake.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they were thinking, unless they're really. I mean, I can look in the financials and be like, you know what? I understand. Like they really didn't have the money. It was either cut these 2 episodes or cancel Velma. We didn't have a choice here. So I think that was an odd choice. They do have that Hedge Knight or the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms show coming next season. Oh, I guess we'll cover that, right?
Yeah.
We'll cover that. So the season, Talking Targaryen's
Don't
not
hold
over.
us. Don't hold us.
Don't hold us to it, yeah.
No, we probably will, though.
We will. I'm going to say right now, we're going to. I'm going to watch it. I want to talk about it. So that's where the episode wraps up, right? That's where the season ends. Looking back on the season as a whole, I kind of pointed it out earlier that it felt like a lot of characters were pinned to certain locations, except when they were zipping around and everything. But I was just trying to, I don't want to say like I've disconnected from the show now and like I don't care anymore, even though I felt some degree of that. So I did do some reflecting because I remember I did not feel that way back toward the beginning of the season. There were ups and downs, some things I didn't like, but I was still very much into the show, and there was a lot for us to chew on other than here's why I didn't like this scene or that scene. And I think if you compare back to season 1, it felt like a lot, you felt like you went through a journey. And if I think about season 2, I don't quite feel that way. I know it's not entirely true. Characters changed, decisions were made, some people died, but I don't feel like I went on as much of a journey as I did with season 1. Like if you had to just quickly summarize some of the big things that happened in season 1, the journeys, they jump out at you. You think about Viserys slowly disintegrating, struggling to keep his family together, but he has this fatal flaw where every time he tries to push them together, all he's doing is tearing them further apart. He wavers on Rhaenyra. He had this complicated, interesting journey. Then you think about Daemon this season, where he had an interesting journey, but it didn't have the same complexity as Viserys, where you could talk about that for hours.
Yeah.
With Daemon, it was like I had a bunch of dreams. I did barbarities that we didn't see. They just happened off screen.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't.
Barbarities.
It just doesn't.
It just felt like the hands of the writers just like were like, we have to push you into this direction,
Right.
And we're gonna do it by dropping this mystery woman in your lap who will just like solve everything.
And if you were to describe Viserys' journey in season 1, you could do like a video essay about it and try to analyze what his motivations were. What was he doing wrong? What was he feeling here? Mm-hmm. Versus Daemon, it feels like a pretty straight line. It wouldn't be a video essay. It would be a recap, which is where I step in. So, I mean, you can go character by character, and that's kind of what I was doing the last couple of days thinking about this. Take Aemond, for instance. I feel like he was really interesting in the first half of the season, where it seemed like he was kind of helping Aegon at first. He was on the council. Then there was a little bit of him conniving behind the scenes with Cole. But then once he became king, and then you also had the Madame Sylvie scene where you're like, okay, maybe this is a little bit of him putting on a character. Once he became king and you get into the second half of the season, he was a lot less interesting to me. It wasn't as interesting to watch. And I feel like, I feel like a lot of characters were like that. It kind of just, it sort of ran out of steam for me, where things felt a little less interesting toward the end of the season. It feels like the pivotal Rook's Rest battle, probably the best episode of the season. Mm-hmm. It was after that I felt like things kind of just not slowed down in terms of the pace of things happening, but slowed down in terms of characters giving me stuff to chew on. That's how it felt to me.
Yeah.
You know, if I were to go back and dissect it, maybe I'd find it didn't quite work out that way. But that's the feeling I'm left with at the end of the season.
I mean, to kind of sum up how I feel, and I think it's similar to what you're saying, it feels like there's just a bunch of stuff that's happening. Yeah. We're just getting all these snapshots into like, this is the way the chessboard looks right now. This is how it looks next episode. And It's just like they're showing us all the dots and expecting us to connect them in our heads because they don't have enough time to do it for us.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
And we're still getting these like breadcrumbs of really well told stories, but you always have to either suspend your disbelief or ignore some other aspect of the story. It's like a little inconsistent. It's very hot and cold.
Yeah.
Just a little disjointed.
Yeah, and then there are character arcs that I thought worked very well, but you look at Alicent, for example. I think her arc was probably one of the best handled, but just by virtue of the premise of her arc this season, it wasn't as interesting to watch. Because the whole problem is that she was restrained from doing anything. Mm-hmm. So you're essentially watching her stuck an entire season. And then I love where it ended up with her making this proposal to Rhaenyra. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's not very interesting to watch. So it would have worked better if all the characters around her had more interesting journeys.
Right.
So then you'd be more accepting of the fact that she's kind of just stuck, even though I like the way it went. So yeah, last one I'll mention, Aegon. I feel like he had a great, interesting arc this season too. The fact that he got burned like this, and he ends up on his, basically a deathbed, but then it feels like he's revving up for something.
Right.
And this is where I'll say I agree. It does feel like he's revving up. What's he going to finally do when he gets out of that bed? Okay, we'll find out next season. So that's where we wrap up. I think pretty universally people were upset with this. I don't know if it was all for the same reasons as us.
Seems like they're upset with it for different reasons than we are, or at least than I am.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I just didn't. I guess I didn't expect that much to happen this episode, right? I mean, I can be disappointed that we didn't get 10 episodes, right, instead of 8. But like once I knew how many episodes we were gonna get, I don't think I was that disappointed because it's like I don't know how much more they could have done.
Yeah,
in one
right.
episode.
If they tried to do more, then you would be complaining that they crammed too much in.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would not want them to rush this.
Yeah.
Part of me is excited about the fact that they're saving it for next season. If we can get a real war with like different battles, and it doesn't all get
show
wrapped
us the battle.
Yeah, and it doesn't all get wrapped up in one episode. Like that will be great. So hey, season 3 might be amazing.
I mean, for all we know, like they actually did something to say, yeah, let's keep the budget low this season so that season 3 can be off the rails in terms of the battles.
We've seen bottle episodes. Now we got our bottle season.
If this is a bottle season and it's released so that they can go ham, season 3, really good battles, showing us like the detail and not glossing over stuff.
Strategy
Could be awesome.
Want to see more of that board with the fire underneath it?
Yeah. We're only halfway through the series. We have a lot of complaints about it, but there's a lot of things it has in its favor, and it's not too late to right the ship. How confident am I that they will?
Yeah,
but they can. It's possible.
All right, let's wrap this up here. So it is confirmed there's going to be 4 seasons. So yeah, we are halfway through, and let's wrap it up. So thank you everybody for coming along on this journey with us this season. And like I said, we'll see you for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. We are going to be doing more podcasting between now and then. Just stay subscribed. You'll see it. We'll make announcements, and you can follow us there too. So thank you, everyone. I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
I'm Daniel.
Dracarys.